Hello, good morning, everyone. This is Paul Tranny here. Going to dive into today's fun little daily creative challenge. So this is what it's all about, just so you know. Sort of creating realistic shadows. So this is kind of the start of it. Here's this little plushie, super small little guy, right? And making him look large, just putting him in a scene. So making something huge. This is actually in my neighborhood, but this is what we're going to work on. And I think it's cool just kind of working on shadows, how people do it, and I have a lot to say about it. So this is going to be fun. So feel free to say hello, and we're going to get started in a minute. So yeah, and just to kind of reiterate, this is just loaded with, this is the little guy. There's the shadow, right? That's one way of doing things. The shadow is actually a little dark, but we'll work on that as well. So stay tuned. I'll be back in about 30 seconds. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. Good to see you. Paul Tranny here. I'm going to dive in today all about creating realistic shadows in Photoshop. So some Photoshop photo editing magic today. I'm glad you guys are here. Want to give you a warm welcome from RB's in the house. Patrick, Frank, let me know if audio levels and all that is good. And that would be fantastic. But I'm good to have you here. Ted, awesome. Anki, Froja, fantastic. Looks like the whole gang's here. My name is Paul Tranny. I'm going to be running the show this week for Photoshop, so this is fun. Here's the Discord where I'm keeping an eye on chat and what you guys create and all that fun stuff. All is good with sound and video. Fantastic, which means we could dive right into this. Check this out. Boom, we're back. Check it out. So this is a little plushie. So if we could see this little guy, he's adorable. Look at how little he is. So it's like taking a toy. You can see many of my toys back there, but like, you know, taking this object, making it large, making it look like it's actually in the middle of the street. So how do you integrate this into that environment? So that's the goal, right? And this is just like a teaser photo, as you can see. Nice and big, taking over the street. This is where I got my coffee this morning, right here, in case you're curious, up at Pinwheel Coffee. It's like a Montessori school. They got me this fancy coffee, which is nice. The Bug Theater, hair salon I go to, Akova, Wildflower. All right, enough about my neighborhood. Let's get into it, shall we? Because again, this is really fun. This is only one of the images too, by the way. There's also this one. So again, even larger, this huge thing. It's really this little guy kind of integrated in that scene. And how do we do this work? So that's the goal. Ooh, it fooled you? Oh, yay. All right, so and this is the file you're given. This is actually pretty easy, but I think it's really good to study these files. And just so you know, if you're joining me elsewhere, jump over to behance.app/Adobe Live. Below me is a link to these files. This is the file. There's going to be a number of files that we work on all week, but it's all about these shadows right here. So this is going to be fun. Here's our little character just taken. And then some different street views as well. Okay, so here's our street views. It's just so important. The best thing you can do is study shadows. When we're talking about shadows, like study them. This is such a good close-up. Like, look at this. First off, this side of the shadow is actually out of focus the way this rock is out of focus. And then it's kind of sharp on this side. But you can see that it's not flat. It warps around all of this. It's typically darker underneath the object and then kind of slowly fades out. But this isn't always true, by the way. This is only true in this case. So when it comes to finding photos, you need to make sure that you are using photos that already have an example of a shadow there. That's why these are great photos. Like I already have an example of this shadow right here. So this is going to be great to match. Streets aren't flat, right? They run at a slight curve. We could see kind of the sharp edges here, and then it kind of blurs out actually on top. And by the way, if we hit eye, we have the eyedropper. You can see that this is not going to be gray. Shadows are never gray, okay? So don't use black. I don't use a good telltale sign of somebody who's like, you know, and again, this goes back to art school. We're never allowed, we didn't even have the color black. We always had to mix black because black is accumulation of all the colors. It's not a color in and of itself, really. It's kind of like the mixture of all colors together. So you can see that this is going to be this sort of steel gray, bluish color. And that's what we're taking clues from. So this is going to be pretty easy and a lot of fun. All right, so let's get this party started. I'm glad you're here. Want to welcome you. Southblade Creations in the house as well. Carol Pearl, Jalil as well. Leah Mama, is that right? Cool. So let's take this character. We learned yesterday, if you are following along, how to sort of cut out a shape like this. And all we need to do, I'm not going to worry about select subject or the object selection tool. I'm going to go over here to remove background because that's all I need to do. Click right there. Zibu. Oh, it did the thing. So happy for this. Like it did a pretty good job. My little character. I feel like I wish I could prop him up somewhere. But anyways, this little buddy, he's going to be joining me today. And now we can do some more cleanup as we'd expect. Okay. Andrew, what's up, buddy? Good to see you, man. Let's talk. Let's say hi. I'm you know, just home alone talking to a cat usually. So that's why I love these live streams. It's nice having consider all of you my coworkers, if that's cool. So I'm selecting the inner part, like kind of between the legs there with my quick selection tool. You might have other ways. I'll use the quick selection tool because we only have 30 minutes for this live stream. We will also point out right over here, not only did it remove the background, it technically kept the background and put a layer mask over the top. So when I'm on this layer mask, I can paint in black. I don't know how you guys do things. I usually do Shift Delete. You could do Option Delete. Option Delete, those two keys will fill whatever selection with the foreground color. Option Delete. Command Delete will fill it with the background color. So just a couple pro tips there. You could also do a Shift Delete, and that will bring up the fill dialog. So you're getting all sorts of shortcuts today. But again, it's the equivalent of filling with foreground or background color and then content aware. So these are the three I typically use. I just did Option Delete, boom, done, ba-ba, da-da, jabam. We still have that black color filled in, like, oops. Let's select a brush maybe if we want to. Let's play with this brush. Let's play with it. I don't even really need to. I don't want to worry about refining this too much, to be honest with you. I want to get onto the shadows, but I will clean this up a little bit just with a brush and a very steady hand. So the best tool you could have in Photoshop is probably a steady hand, huh? It's like, look at that. Oh, yeah, just take a chunk out of his skull. How dare you, Paul? That's why I use actually a Cintiq. Cintiq Pro 24-inch works out great. Just FYI. Ooh, but the calibration is way off. So calibration is way off. So maybe that's not the best way. Yeah. I really need to adjust the calibration on this. It's too messy. Guess what? You could do this. You could take a chunk out of it because it's going to be easier. If I hit the X key, it flips the foreground and background color, and now I can go and fill that back in. That was easier to fill in those colors and get that squared away that way. We have our character done. All right, pen tool, please. Yes, I like the pen tool. The thing about the pen tool, Frank, is it gives it that hard edge. And I actually don't want a hard edge. I want like a little bit of a feather. So like a little, like not as much hardness. I wanted it just like a little bit softer, right? Because all this stuff, guess what? There are no hard edges here. All of these kind of blend together. So that's one telltale sign as well as the crispness of an image. All right, next up, what are we going to do? We're going to protect our little guy, our little Photoshop squishy guy, and we're going to convert him to a smart object. Shabo. All right, steady hand will be handy for this task. Puns are popping. All right, here's our character. Guess what? You got a big leg up with this image because the lighting already matches the character. Because I actually took this photo of this little guy, this little squishy, the original, wherever it is, if I could roll it back somehow, was taken right on the same concrete. So lightning matches. I need to probably clean up that spot. Probably need to clean up right in here. It's a really rough looking toy. But again, this is all about shadows. So let's get into it now. Here's our character. Boom. Okay, we could try a number of things. We made this smart object. So many tutorials out there on creating shadows, right? We need it to match, and we need it to match this character. What I will typically do is I will duplicate this layer, Command J to jump it, right? And this is going to be my shadow. And I'm going to destroy this thing like you have no idea, right? I'm going to destroy this little guy. Sorry, buddy. Transform. We could jump in. We can go to distort. We can go to warp. I'll probably go to distort, right? And we could do something like that. This is probably the easiest way because even though it's not going to look much like this character, and yes, it is at a different angle, this is still going to get us at just a good reference point. Now, speaking of reference points and checking questions, he is very cute. I'm matching. This is why your photo choice matters a lot. If you have a decision in the background, like I could see how long that is. So this is already at like the wrong angle, right? So we'll easily fix that. We'll come in here, we'll adjust, we'll make sure it is at that sort of like right angle. Move it, move it, move it. I like to move it. All right. Something like that. Okay, there we are. Hit enter. Okay. Take a sip of my shout out to Pinwheel Coffee right over here. I don't know what this dude's doing. What are you doing, buddy? Gotcha. Sorry I didn't get a photo release. I'm so sorry about that. All right. So we got part of this done. Yeah, I'm going to really get to messing with this. Okay, so bear with me. This is what I'm going to do really fast. I'm going to double click on the blank spot next to the layer. We're just going to fill this with black or at least dark gray. I know I said black earlier, not to worry, we're going to change it later. Okay, so we're going to do a color overlay and we'll just like sample from like under here, for instance. Like that. There we go. Cool. Click OK. Click OK. Done. We've been working non-destructively. In fact, check this out. We'll go to filter. We need to blur it out too. It actually gets to be like a pretty hard edge. I don't even know if we need to blur it much, by the way. So let's do that. Let's go to filter. Let's go into tilt shift. We're just going to play with this. I'm not. You know what? I might do a field blur. Let's do field blur. You ready for this? Check this out. Field blur gives us this little spot. So right over here, I can make this like super blurry right over here. but I can also add a pin right here to make it less blurry, because all parts of the shadow are not created equal. So that's just a tip, even though it doesn't match this perfectly. This tip is going to help you out so much when creating shadows. So I can have down here, it's going to be a little more blurry further away than next to the actual object. And this kind of shows it well too. Really sharp, but it only gets slightly blurry over there. Okay. So we're playing with this. We're tightening it up. We're tightening it up. We're tightening it up. Right, like that. And again, as I move that around, we could see it sharpen it. Cool. Shoot. Might even be at 0. What do you think? So there that is. That's what I'll use for the blur. We have that. We'll click OK. We're well on our way. Oh, buddy. Frank says, I'm waiting for the add shadows neural filter. That would be a thing. Boy, yowza. From there, again, a cheap way is just kind of take down the opacity. And we could still play with the color overlay in here. So if we feel like we didn't get the right color, we could start to sample in there, maybe get something a little bit darker if we want to. Always keeping in mind or checking with the shadow, even sampling over here. So see how, since I've adjusted the opacity, it really obviously like lightened up the shadow. So again, we'll increase that a little bit, and that's sort of how you can make sort of the basics of a shadow. But we're not done, and I'm glad you guys are here. The shadow has to be more black and to the right. Love the feedback. Keep it coming. And it needs to be more vibrant, okay? Shouldn't it be on multiply? Thank you, Carol. Thank you for bringing this up as well. You guys are all getting at what I'm about to do here, but let's go ahead and change this to multiply, because you know what? This is a community effort. There's really no... Changing it to multiply will only remove, let me double check, it only plays with the dark colors. There's no light colors in that shadow. So multiply, that's why we're not really noticing a change. Right? But we do notice that it's lighter, which means our color overlay needs to be darker. And it's just a lot of fidgeting is what we're doing now. Notice how we're doing like a lot of tweaking. We're like, okay, well, maybe I'll go in here. Maybe I'll crank that up. And that's actually looking better. And maybe we'll take down the opacity, right? Doing stuff like that. So again, this is sort of the one, this is almost a sort of, I would call this the College Course 102. Let's double click. We're going to add a layer mask to this shadow. So that's what we're going to do, because we are going to have it like maybe fade out a little bit. So go down to the bottom of that panel. We'll click add layer mask right there. Here's our layer mask. And really it only, oh shoot, so sorry about that. It really only gets a little lighter down here, but it's definitely dark down there. So that's why we want to use maybe even a linear gradient set to black and white. The blur controller not on Windows only. I'm not sure about that, but I don't know. Yeah, you might be correct. All right, so we're waiting for it to load up all my gradients. There we go. Here we are. We're just going to switch from foreground color to white. So we'll just do zhoop, like that. So we just faded that out a little bit, and that helps it. Okay, cool, right? Another thing we could do, by the way, because look, all this, oh, so sorry about my zoom. I changed my zoom yesterday, and it's kind of driving me nuts. It's like I shouldn't even use the scroll wheel. See how dark that is beneath the car and how light it is here? See? Look at that. Dark and then light. Technically, there are like two shadows on this side. There's the shadow of the building, and then there's the shadow of the atmosphere giving it that shadow. So this is a little bit better example. We can see that it's much darker right there. So how would we do that? That's a great question. That is a great question. Let's do it. Let's just create a new layer. And I'm going to show you, this is going to bring up an issue, and I'm so glad you guys are here. Because watch this. I'm going to start, I'll add a clipping mask. If I add a clipping mask right here, boom, it's going to just, I'm only going to be able to paint within these pixels, right? So that's what I would do. Let's just change this to black. We'll hit B for brush, and I'll start painting. Watch what happens. Nothing. A whole lot of nothing happens. But you're like, wait, this is painting over that, right? You thought it was, because what's happening in here is it's actually then applying the color overlay on top of your clipping mask. So that's the issue that's going on there. How do you get rid of it? You could do this a number of ways. It's really up to you on how you want to deal with this. Probably what I would do, I would do this. I would jump in, and again, this is real world stuff. I would rasterize this layer, right? I would rasterize that layer, and then I would come in and let's try this. Rasterize layer style. Boom. I basically rasterized everything. I kind of didn't want that. So let's jump this. Let's get rid of this effect. Let's delete that layer mask. So we're kind of back down to this thing. Boom. Rasterize layer style. There it is. Here's our hard shadow. There's that. And it still has the blur next to it. So anyways, so that's one way to do it, which is just like mash things together, and then you can apply that. Oh, look, now it's dark. Thanks, buddy. You know, do you want to go this way? Hey, you can if you want to. From here, I'd start to like, you know, I'm just going to kind of paint out that black or delete that black and adjust the opacity down, right? So that's how we get that hardness. But the problem with all of this is it's all being controlled by this shadow still. So what this ultimately needs, rather than even doing that, I would come in here and I would just use this as a layer mask. So if you just come down, command click, it'll turn that into a selection, apply that selection as a layer mask right there. And now I can paint on inside of there. So that's what I would do. I was kind of showing you the different ways. And the problem, kind of what you'd run into logically and what you ultimately need to do, which is make a separate layer for my layer mask in this case. So questions, concerns, irrational fears, let me know. Let me take this flow down. Let's just like paint in something that's like darker underneath like that. That's all I'm doing. Cool. So we have the darker shad under the object, and then the actual shadow, like so. Boom, boom. Cool, cool. Okay. Create a layer from the style. Yeah, that's what I worked on, Carol. I smashed everything together, and it just got to be messy, and I feel like this feels pretty good because I can now independently control the opacity of this layer, and then also control the opacity and effects of that layer. So I did that with this one layer. I'm going to do the street number 2 because I think I have 5 minutes, and you know how I like starting projects and just doing a quick review of all of this really fast. Let's take this character. Let's make him really large. Let's undo that. We're going to do all this really fast as possible. Any chance you get when you're adding shadows, you know, try to put them in scenarios where you could maybe put it behind this. And that's what I'm doing. Putting him behind this car. Kind of in between. So I'm going to jump in and see if I can grab that really fast. Wait for it. Wait for it. Grab it, Paul. Hurry. We have like 3 minutes, and I thought I'd start a new project. Layer mask. Here's our character. We're going to put this truck in front. So that's what I'm doing, is just creating that. That's all I needed. And now I'm going to show you another awesome method. And that is actually jumping in and using either levels or curves. Hey, we're not really adding a lot of, we'll just add curves. But check this out. Curves adjust the brightness of everything. So we know a lot of times like shadow is almost like the absence of color. But consider using curves. So right in here, I'll take this, I'll invert it, I'll hit B for brush, and I'll paint and add this curves opacity. Let's crank this up. I'm adding that curves right in here. So rather than like painting with a color or anything, in this case, I'm adjusting the curves. What's nice about this is I now have control over all aspects of this. So use adjustment layers to add shadows. So in this case, I've made it darker. We can see it right here. I can crank that more, right? And you can see what it's doing right there. Okay. That's working okay. You know, I just like that you're able to control different aspects. I could even jump in and say, crank up the blues. So see what I'm doing there? So adding like a little bit of blue. Is it getting the perfect color there? Maybe not. Actually, it needs to be a little bit of green, but you know, I can add a little bit of green and just try to match this shadow over here is all I'm doing. Okay. So now all I do is just start painting with this brush right in here and make sure I match the intensity of the shadow. Cool. Cool. Just drop a fuzzy circle under. Yeah, we could do that because really we just need something very nebulous. And yeah, let's just kind of paint where we want. And you get the idea. Painting right in here. But that is your project. I just painted really fast. We could play with this some more. The big thing is shadows are not black usually. They're gonna have a little bit of a color tint to them and take cues from the shadows around it. But the biggest giveaway is usually when people paint with black. So try not to do that. It's going to be a lot more subtle than that. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed hanging out with you guys. And now we have our 2 versions. Again, I'll just jump to sort of this final one that I've worked on before. And there it is. So post what you can to good old Discord. And love to see it. What you do with your little Photoshop squishy guy. Yay. Oh, by the way, there's a Flash monkey. And there happens to be an Adobe Max Safari guy. These were giveaways many years ago. I don't know what year. Maybe you guys know. It was probably maybe 8-10 years ago is my guess. So stick around. AIDCC up next, which you know I'm going to watch. Thanks for hanging out, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye.